For years, most Overlord fans believed that Nazarick's greatest weapon was Ain's ul gown. But the truth is, Ain's might not even be among the 3 greatest advantages the Great Tomb possesses. Because the anime showed us the Floor Guardians. It showed us incredible battles. It showed us overwhelming magic. But it also hid the very thing that made Nazarick almost impossible to conquer. And once you discover how the light novel describes the Great Tomb, you realize it was never built to fight monsters. It was built to defeat the strongest players in Yggdrasil. And that completely changes the way we look at Overlord. But before we continue, I want to hear your opinion. Do you think there's any force capable of destroying Nazarick? Or do you believe the Great Tomb is still hiding weapons and defenses we've never seen? Because the deeper we dive into the light novel, the more obvious it becomes that the anime only showed us the surface. It all starts with one simple question. Why was Nazarick so different from every other guild? Most fans assume it was simply because the 41 supreme beings were incredibly powerful. But that's only part of the answer. The truth is that they knew any famous guild would eventually become a target. In Yggdrasil, conquering enemy guild bases was one of the biggest challenges in the game. Players wanted rare items, treasure, prestige, and above all, the guild weapon. That's why Nazarick was never designed just to look impressive. It was designed to survive the worst possible scenario. Every floor had a purpose. Every trap existed for a reason. Every NPC was part of a much larger strategy. The goal was never to win quickly. It was to wear invaders down until they simply couldn't keep fighting. And there's one event that proves this strategy actually worked. Long before the events of Overlord, Nazarick faced the largest invasion ever recorded in Yggdrasil. Around 1,500 invaders, including players and mercenary NPCs, attempted to conquer the Great Tomb. Even by the standards of a game filled with powerful guilds. That number was unbelievable. And yet, they failed. No other guild became as legendary for surviving an assault of that scale. That single fact completely changes the way we should view Nazarick. Because, in the new world, almost no one is strong enough to force the Great Tomb to reveal all of its true defenses. Most enemies can't even make it past the Floor Guardians. Which means a huge portion of Nazarick's real power has never been seen. That's why so many fans believe Albedo, Shaltir, Demiurge, Cositus, and Aura represent the full extent of Nazarick's military strength. But that's far from the truth. The Floor Guardians are incredibly powerful. Yet they were never meant to be the final line of defense. In reality, they're only one piece of a much larger system. Beyond them, Nazarick possesses permanent monsters. Mercenary NPCs summoned using guild resources. Creatures that can be replaced whenever necessary. Automatic traps. Items specifically designed to counter high-level players. And an entire defense system where every floor exists to drain the enemy's time, mana, and resources. Do you see the pattern? Everything inside Nazarick was designed for long wars, not individual battles. And there's one floor that represents this philosophy better than any other. The mysterious 8th floor. Curiously, the anime barely talks about it. But in the light novel, it's treated as the true heart of Nazarick's defenses. Even characters overflowing with confidence rarely speak about what actually exists there. And that raises an unavoidable question. What kind of power could exist in a place that even Nazarick's own residents refuse to discuss? The answer begins with a single name. Rubedo. Despite appearing only briefly, Rubedo is constantly treated as something beyond ordinary. Several characters imply that she stands above nearly every other NPC in Nazarick. According to information revealed throughout the light novel, not even Shaltir, one of the strongest Floor Guardians, would normally stand a chance against her. And that's an incredible statement. Because, for most of the story, Shaltir is portrayed as one of Nazarick's greatest military assets. If someone exists above even her, then the anime has shown us only a fraction of the Great Tomb's true power. But Rubedo isn't the only secret Nazarick has been hiding. In fact, she might not even be its most valuable asset. Because there's something the Supreme Beings spent years collecting throughout their adventures in Yggdrasil. Something capable of changing the outcome of an entire war. The world items. World items weren't just incredibly rare pieces of equipment. They were artifacts capable of overriding the very rules of Yggdrasil. Some could nullify powerful abilities. Others protected their owners from effects that would normally be unavoidable. And some possessed powers capable of completely changing the outcome of a battle. That's exactly why no guild could rely on raw strength alone. A single world item could completely overturn everything. And this is where Nazarick stands out once again. The 41 Supreme Beings spent years collecting these legendary artifacts, to the point that Nazarick possessed one of the largest collections of world items in all of Yggdrasil. Most of them have never even appeared in the anime, which means it's impossible to judge Nazarick's full military potential based only on what we've seen. But there's another resource that rarely gets the attention it deserves. The Treasury of Nazarick. When people hear that name, they usually imagine mountains of gold. But the guild's true wealth goes far beyond that. It's filled with divine-class equipment, legendary weapons, extremely rare consumable items, magic crystals, scrolls, and countless resources that would take an ordinary player years to obtain. Everything was accumulated throughout countless adventures in Yggdrasil. That means Ains never fights using only what he's wearing. He has access to an enormous arsenal prepared for virtually every kind of enemy and situation. And the more you think about it, the more you realize that Nazarick's greatest strength was never raw power alone. It was preparation. While most opponents are forced to improvise during battle, Ains usually has dozens of options already available. But that preparation didn't begin with him. In fact, it started long before he became the last Supreme Being. One of the biggest misconceptions among fans is believing that Nazarick belongs only to Ains. In reality, every corridor of the Great Tomb still carries the influence of the other 40 guild members. Seabass reflects the ideals of Touch Me. Cositus embodies warrior Takamikazuchi's passion for honorable combat. Demiurge inherited much of Ulbertalan Odal's creativity and personality. Albedo was created by Tabula Smaragdina, and her character settings were famously altered by Ains during Yggdrasil's final moments. In other words, even though the Supreme Beings disappeared, their legacy never did. Their personalities, their values, their ideas, they're still alive through the NPCs they created. And that's what makes Nazarick so different from every other nation in the New World. It wasn't built by one genius. It was built through years of collaboration between 41 incredibly dedicated players. Every trap, every room, every NPC, every strategy was designed to support everything else. And there's one final detail that makes all of this even more fascinating. Even Ains doesn't fully understand everything that exists inside Nazarick. Throughout the light novel, he repeatedly admits that he wasn't involved in creating every NPC, doesn't know every system left behind by the guild, and isn't fully familiar with all the resources the other Supreme Beings created. That means even the ruler of the Great Tomb is still discovering secrets hidden inside his own kingdom. Think about how incredible that is. If even Ains can still be surprised by Nazarick, how could any enemy possibly prepare for everything waiting inside? Maybe that's why so many characters fear the Great Tomb. They don't fear Ains alone. They fear the unknown. A fortress built to defeat the strongest players in Yggdrasil. An arsenal that has barely been used. Resources that have never been fully revealed. And secrets hidden so deeply that even the Sorcerer King hasn't uncovered all of them. Perhaps that's why Nazarick continues to fascinate Overlord fans after all these years. Not because we've already seen everything it can do, but because every new revelation reminds us how much still remains hidden. Maybe Nazarick's greatest secret was never Rubedo, or the world items, or its legendary treasure. Its greatest secret has always been its preparation. Because the Great Tomb was never built to win a single battle. It was built to survive any war. And maybe that's why, even after so many seasons, it still feels like we've seen only a small fraction of what truly lies inside Nazarick. So now I want to hear your opinion. Which hidden secret of Nazarick fascinates you the most? And what mystery are you hoping the light novel will reveal in the future? Let me know your theory in the comments.